Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Alex.
Hey, Alex, how's it going today?
It's going well. We get to break down some of our rankings here.
I like that because today we begin talking about fantasy football and positional rankings. As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please subscribe to us on the socials. We are on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and now Threads with the handle at N2EFantasy. Alex, what position are we breaking down today?
We are starting with the juicy tight end rankings here. So we get to break it down, and we're going to go our top 15 in reverse order. So we'll start with our 15th and through down to our number one, and we're going to rotate back and forth. So I'm going to say my 15th, and then Jeff is either going to say that's who he has, or if he has someone else there, then he's going to say that, and then we're going to talk about why Jeff's wrong and I'm right, and so on and so forth until we get down to our number one.
Absolutely. And we did 15 because we hope to have some differences towards the end of our list, because we all know that the beginning of the tight end list is a lot more similar than we care to admit.
Yeah. We like to have 15 because there's a lot of borderline tight end ones for fantasy. So we want to make sure we give you guys some options for your drafts.
Absolutely. So, Alex, without further ado, coming in at number 15 for you is?
I have Cole Kmet from Chicago.
All right. I know that's not one of your favorite players, so it's interesting to hear him in the top 15. What made you decide to settle him in the top 15?
I think that overall, someone like a mobile quarterback typically targets the tight end a little bit. And I think that he's a big target, one of the three larger targets there. And he already has somewhat of a connection with Justin Fields. So I have him at 15, which is not fully a tight end one for me, but he's on that borderline area. What about you, Jeff? Who do you have at 15?
At 15, I have the Buffalo Bills' Dawson Knox. So he gets knocked down a few pegs because they got because they got a new rookie in Dalton Kincaid.
All right.
And
That's it. Cut it. Cut it right here. Cut.
right? Right? It's a good joke. He got knocked down a few pegs, and basically that is why he's my number 15, even though he finished 14 last year.
See, and I could have said I couldn't commit to Cole in the top 12. So missed opportunity there. But I think in some ways these guys are kind of similar. So it makes sense that they'd be around the 15th spot, like somewhere in this range. I think I have Knox a little bit lower, but at this stage, that doesn't mean that much because a lot of these tight ends, they're going to move if they happen to get more touchdowns. And touchdowns are a little bit fluky. So that's one thing. We're just trying to focus on how much they're going to be used in their offense is really how we're going to try to like rank them, as well as we have our own stat projections as well that we try to pinpoint these guys. But to me, they're very similar, and you can make a case for either one of them being at the spot.
And I think in any normal league, there's going to be roughly like 18 to 20 tight ends that are rostered. There's probably like that first 4 or 5 tight ends that don't need a backup, and you would use that roster spot for something else. So just because they just missed our list doesn't mean that they're not rosterable.
My 14th is a local Houston Texan, is Dalton Schultz, the new tight end for the Texans. I think that the Texans have been searching for a good passing down tight end for quite some time since we've had Owen Daniels as our tight end. And so we've been searching, and I think Dalton Schultz is certainly going to fill the void this year. I don't know if he's a long-term solution, but I'm optimistic for him. But I also don't want to go full fanboy for just a Texans player. So I have him at 14th, not in my top 12 or anything like that. So there's upside for him to break into the top 10. I'm just trying to be more conservative with my outlook for him this year. So Jeff, who do you have at 14? And then what do you think of Dalton Schultz here as well?
So let me start with Schultz first. The last 3 years, he's finished 10th, 3rd, and 14th. So you have him at his floor from the last 3 seasons. And I am a tad bit more optimistic than you, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But coming in at 14 for me is the guy that knocks down the peg once, a couple of slots here, is Dalton Kincaid. And I do believe that he takes over the tight end one position. He was a first round pick for the Buffalo Bills. And I don't believe the Bills have been super thrilled with Knox the last few years. He does have his fair share of drops. So that's kind of why I put Kincaid ahead of Knox, and we will see what the Bills do. I do expect them fully to run a two tight end set out of their base package because they don't really have a third wide receiver to throw the ball to. So makes sense to throw that second tight end on the field instead.
Yeah, do you think he could be the most successful tight end since for the rookie season anyway, since like your rival Atlanta Falcons team with Kyle Pitts?
Yeah,
Yep.
yes, he could be really close to that. He finished seventh in his rookie year, so it will be interesting to see if that happens again. Also, that year, which we didn't talk about, and we'll probably talk about this player a little bit, but Pat Fryermuth was number 13 in his rookie year. So I would say that we actually got two good tight ends out of that year.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of optimism for Kincaid, and I think where you have him is a reasonable spot. I have him just outside the top 15, and I really have both Knox and Kincaid just outside the top 15 because it's hard for me to put both of them in. But where you have them, you can definitely make the argument for them.
Yeah, I think they're both rosterable, and I think at this point, like if Knox or Kincaid got hurt, then it just springboards one of them into probably the top 10 territory quickly.
All right, who do you have at 13?
All right, so I guess we're switching order here, and I have
Mixing it
someone,
up.
and I know why you did this because I have someone here that you probably do not have on your list.
It'll be interesting to see if that's accurate. We'll
Well,
see.
we're going to find out. I have David Njoku, number 13 for the Cleveland Browns. And I know you're like laughing at me right now because either I'm wrong about David Njoku or I'm wrong that he's not on your list.
No, he is not in my top 15. And I know fantasy owners out there, the David Njoku truthers, are screaming saying, but he is a good tight end. Well, they just brought in a lot more receiving options, and I don't know how that bodes for David Njoku. But I don't know. I mean, you can make the case for him. There's always the case every year that he's a top 10 tight end, that he's going to burst into the scene and produce fantasy wise. And he's been fairly good. So you can make the case for that. I don't see it in that crowded receiving room right now, but it's fair. I have someone that I didn't think that I would have him in my top 15, but he performed very well last year. So I have Evan Ingram with Jacksonville. And it's really between Evan Ingram and now like obviously with Christian Kirk, and now they brought in Ridley. It's really those three guys. I don't think Zay Jones is as good as the other three, so I still see Evan Ingram getting a decent target share there. I just don't think he'll do as high as he was last year, but it's still worthy of 13th for me. Jeff, how do you feel about Evan Ingram here? Am I too low? Am I too high?
Well, I think you're a tad bit low. He did finish sixth last year. I don't think he's going to finish in the top six this year, but I do think that it'll be a little bit higher than 13. But again, we're nitpicking here. I don't want to nitpick a guy that we both really like and we both believe is rosterable. So I will turn it back over to you for your number 12.
Number 12 is Pat Fryermuth, and that's
Okay.
because they brought in Allen Robinson, who will take some target shares, Darnell Washington, who may take some red zone targets. So I'm not like really low on Fryermuth. A lot of these guys are within a few points from each other, so they're really like razor thin close to each other. But I have Fryermuth here. Am I too low on Fryermuth? Who do you have at 12? What do you think?
Ever so slightly on Fryermuth. He'll be coming up on my list in a little bit, but to repeat a name that you already said, Cole Kmet is my number 12. So I do feel like Cole and Fields could link up this year, and DJ Moore will take some of that attention away. We all know how a mobile quarterback likes their tight end. And I just think that he finished seventh last year. So this is definitely not a stretch by any imagination. I do believe that he's a tight end one again this year.
Yeah, that's pretty close to where I have him, obviously a little bit higher, but I think that that's pretty fair for Cole. I wouldn't go much higher than that though, so that's about as high as I'd put him.
Absolutely. So who do you have at number 11? So we're in the
So at number
TE1 territory.
yeah, at number 11, I have Tyler Higbee with the Rams. They're probably going to have to throw it a lot. I don't know how much Stafford's going to be able to throw down the field. So I think Higbee in mid-range, short range will probably be a very good target for him. They need a big target because they lost Allen Robinson and they lost some other receivers the year before. So it's between Higbee, it's between Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson. So there's really not that much to go outside of Cooper Kupp. So Higbee is probably a guy that's going to get those targets.
Yeah, let's go. He's also my number 11. I do expect him to get another TE1 season, and he had one last year. I do think the momentum is going to continue, and this is our first agreement out of these. So great news there. So he must be the TE11, right?
Yeah, it's got to be it. Jeff and I both agree. It's got to be it.
The
So
stars have
clearly,
aligned.
yeah, clearly everything else is going to be exactly the same from this point on, right, Jeff?
Everything is going to be absolutely the same.
So who do you have here, Jeff, at number 10?
I have Pat Fryermuth. The Muth is loose here at number 10. And he does take a dip from number 8 last year to number 10, and that does account for the Washington, and it accounts for the Robinson acquisition, and it also accounts for Pickett taking a second year leap. So, and I'm not saying it's going to be a huge leap, but it'll be big enough to like make the offense a little more viable all around. I do believe. We'll see here, but I think you're a little bit lower than him. But I know that you also own some shares of Fryermuth, and you hope that I'm right at number 10. Who's your number 10?
My number 10 is someone who we've talked about as a tight end sleeper a little bit when we talked about offseason signings, and that is Irv Smith Jr. with Cincinnati. I think he is a very enticing option at tight end, especially associated with that Cincinnati offense and with Joe Burrow. He could be the tight end that they've been looking for a long time, especially if he can stay healthy for a full season. I think he can be a very good tight end number one for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will see what happens there. Whew. It'll be really interesting. I've been acquiring him every which way.
Yep. All right. So now we move on to number 9. And this is, for me, it's someone whose name I'm going to have fun trying to pronounce. So I apologize to this player if I butcher your name. But it's the Tennessee Titans young tight end, second year tight end, I believe. Chigozium Okonkwo. I hope that's right. I think that he did pretty solidly last year. As we know, the Titans receiving core is brutal. So unless they sign someone like DeAndre Hopkins or bring in more people, this tight end could get a large target share there and be a very good tight end one for people. He may not be on everyone's radar. I know he's starting to get some notoriety, but I like him right now as the number 9.
Wow.
Jeff, who do you have? And what do you
Wow.
think of this guy?
I didn't see that coming, but I don't hate it either. He's number 19 on my list, so he's outside of what we're talking about right now. But I like this bold call. He's one of two second year tight ends in my top 20. So the other one also missed my top 15 in Greg Dolchitz. So we'll see which one of those two actually pan out the most. But both of them really impressed me in year one. Moving on to my number 9 is Dalton Schultz, which is your guy, which you should be really happy that I have him in the top 10 because that means that the Texans are getting the asset that they paid for. They're getting a TE1 and a guy that can contribute with a rookie quarterback right away. So let's hope I'm right there. And I like your bold call.
I have to say, because I've said before that a lot of these guys are razor thin, close to each other on my rankings. Essentially, the difference between number 9 and number 14 with Dalton Schultz for me is basically a touchdown. If I give another touchdown to Schultz, give or take a point or two, he's at number 9. So they're very close, very very close.
Agreed. So who do you have at number 8?
So this is a guy I think I'm higher than you on for sure, and that is the Arizona tight end Zach Ertz. I know he's coming off an injury. However, and Jeff and I have talked about this offline. That is an awfully short wide receiver core. I think it's like 5'9", 5'7", 5'8", something like that. Like their top three wide receivers are super short. So someone is going to have to be the tall red zone threat, right? And they have Zach Ertz. And of course, you can detract from him and saying that they've got Trey McBride as well, who's young and waiting in the wings. I think Trey McBride certainly gets targets and gets some stats, but I think Zach Ertz is the guy that will get the high point balls, the jump balls, the contested catches, the red zone targets, the short yardage targets. I think he is the guy for Kyler. So I still like him even coming off an injury. He might even have been a spot or two higher if he wasn't coming off an injury, but I really like Zach Ertz. Jeff, how do you feel about this? And then who do you have in that spot?
Ooh, I think that's a bold call, but we will see. He's aging, as we've discussed. He's in his early 30s. We'll see how much more that Zach has in the tank and how much he's able to come back and rebound from the ACL injury. And he's also got that young Trey McBride nipping at his heels, not nipping at his ACL, but his Achilles area. So
Mm.
there's a injury joke somewhere in there. But my number 8 is somebody that you already mentioned in Evan Ingram. I do believe that he takes a step back, but not a big step back. So he's still going to contribute, and he's first got to sign the franchise tag. I don't believe he's done that yet. So before he can contribute, he's got to sign that tag and get out there and be one of the three weapons that they have. He might be the number 2. Jacksonville's going to be really interesting. There's a universe where Ridley could be the 1, Ingram could be the 2, and Kirk could fall to the 3, even though he was the big acquisition last year. I do think that and I do think Zay Jones just falls off the map because there's no way that he should have 70 or 80 receptions in a year again, now with Ridley on the roster. So there's plenty of targets and plenty of yards to go around in this offense, and I do think that they're on the rise. So Trevor Lawrence has this franchise looking really good for the foreseeable future, and hopefully he can continue that rise, especially after that disastrous Urban Meyer year, which we
Mm.
thought maybe we have a bust on our hands, and that was absolutely not correct. And he's proven that he could turn it around and not lose confidence. But I do have Evan Ingram at 8. So we're moving into the top 7, and I believe there's going to be a lot of similarities here. We don't know each other's picks, so we're going to see if we're identical or not identical here. I'll let you go first at number 7.
So at number 7, I have a familiar name to all you long-term fantasy people, and that's Dallas Goedert with Philadelphia. I think he's still going to be the third option there with Philly, although you can make a case for now Swift being there in the running back position. He might be getting some targets, although they haven't really passed that much compared to other teams to running backs. So I think Dallas Goedert's still going to be very prominent coming out of the tight end position. Jeff, how do you feel about Goddard there, and who do you got at 7?
So I completely agree on your assessment of Goddard, so much so that I also have him at my number 7. He should rebound after a little bit of an injury riddled year where he did finish 12th, but he's got Hurts on his second full deal. I know we just talked about Ertz and it was his former protege in Philly, but Hurts now with his second full year on this offense and taking the complete reins of it, he should be able to produce a tight end 1 out of this and a high end tight end 1 out of it. So coming in at number 6, who do you have?
I have the new New York Giants tight end, Darren Waller, at 6. And I think that depending on the Saquon Barkley news, he could end up being even higher if Barkley sits out. So he would be potentially the de facto number 1 receiving option if Barkley's out. I like his upside. I am trying to be conservative at 6 for him. Jeff, how do you feel about that? And who do you have at 6 as well?
So I need to ask you a question first. Is this ranking of Waller based on Barkley playing or not playing or like meeting in the middle?
Right now, it's based on Barkley playing. It's my conservative ranking. He would be maybe a little bit higher up if
Okay.
Barkley is not playing.
Okay. So I have Kyle Pitts at 6 because I don't know how much I trust Desmond Ritter to be able to get him and London and Bijan the ball. That is kind of why I am going with Kyle Pitts at number 6.
So maybe one of the things we potentially could have talked about as well is we may have similar rankings, but where, like, what are the points that these guys are getting? Like, let's say half point. Let's split the difference here and do a half point PPR. What do you think Kyle Pitts puts up, or maybe just the passing yards? How many passing yards do you think he catches, receiving yards?
So receiving yards for Kyle Pitts would be, and I'm looking this up on the fly, which does not make for great podcasting, but would be 81 receptions for 972 yards. What do you have, sir?
I have, okay, so I'll just go ahead and break into Kyle Pitts is my number 5. So one spot above what you have, but I have lower stats for him. I also don't think that a very run heavy offense is going to pass a lot to both Drake London and to Kyle Pitts. But with tight end receiving stats as they are, I still have him number 5, and I have him getting a little bit shy of 800 yards off of about 60 receptions.
So outside of Pitts in London, who is the third receiving option for Atlanta? Do you know off the top of
I
your
think
head?
it's I think it's going to be Bijan Robinson.
Okay. But so we'll take the running back position out of that. Who is the next pass catcher up?
I mean, does Cordarrelle Patterson count?
I think that they're gonna. I think that they would move him back to wide receiver. I think they have to
Yeah,
at this point with Algier and Robinson. Also, Mac Hollins is there, so so I have a lot of the stats going to London and Pitts just out of the sheer. Who else is there argument?
but I don't think it's going to be a high octane, heavy passing offense. I think with the running backs that they have now, they're going to try to run the ball more.
Right.
But I do think that they're going to involve their running backs in the passing game. So I'm not sure if they can figure out, for someone who has experience being a tight end coach, it doesn't seem like Atlanta's coach is actually able to scheme for tight ends, which is very strange to me. And also, I think Jonnu Smith, I think maybe people are underestimating how much he's going to eat into Kyle Pitts, his
Right.
target share as well. So I just don't see Kyle Pitts going back to the 900 plus yard range. However, I could be wrong, and maybe he can get that fixed. Maybe that whole offense can get that straightened out. I don't know. It's something we'll have to see.
I would agree. And since you released your number 5, I'm going to release my number 5 and Darren Waller. So we just had those two flip flopped and swapped. But I do have Waller at more stats than you have Kyle Pitts at on your list. I have Darren Waller going 79 receptions, 1,001 yard, and 6 touchdowns.
And I ask, are you anticipating Barkley holding out?
Nope.
Man, I'm
I
gonna
just
be
don't
curious
see anyone.
I'm gonna be curious when we do the wide receiver rankings what you have for those Giants wide receivers, because that whole group was very difficult to pinpoint on what they
It's
get, and I don't
it's
think
not
any of them are
good.
1,000 yards. Yeah, I don't think any of them get 1,000 yards.
The most I
So
have from the receiving core is 682 yards off of 64 receptions.
right now I'm in the 700s for Waller, and I may bump him up, but it's I think it's gonna be in pretty even spread between these receiving options right now.
But I do think Waller's going to be like the wide receiver one. Like, I know he's a tight end, but I think he's going to be the pass catcher one on this team. And I think it's going to be number 1 by a wide margin.
I don't know how much that means with Daniel Jones as your quarterback, though.
Daniel Jones, and it's kind of interesting that you said this, threw for 3,200 yards. So he still got 3,200 yards to distribute, and he did 3,200 yards on 16 games last year.
Hmm.
So I could see him get it like a slight bump up. Like I think I have him projected at 3,900 yards. A, because he's now a $40 million quarterback, and B, because now he's got a big pass catching tight end, which might help him add like 400 or 500 yards to his total by the end of the year, which is what, like, it's like 20, it's like 50 yards extra a game. So we'll see if he can do it or can't do it. Or
I think I bumped him up to about 3,600 yards, which is still an increase. I just, between Waller, between Slayton, and some of these other wide receivers that they have, I can't see anyone breaking the 1,000 yard mark. So it's hard for me to get there. I may be able to bump some of them up to the 800s, maybe, but I don't think it's going to change my rankings that much, honestly.
Absolutely. So we need to move on to our top four. Who do you have coming in at number four?
So I have George Kittle with the 49ers. I think that McCaffrey being there full for the full season is going to eat into Kittle and is going to eat into especially Debo Samuels because I don't think Debo is going to get to do all the rushing stats that he's been doing the past couple seasons. So I have Kittle at 4. He's also getting older. I think that Debo Samuels and IU are also going to be taking a bigger target share going forward as well. But I still like Kittle a lot, especially for this season.
You surprised me a bit because I expected to hear this name at number four on your list, TJ Hawkinson. I have Hawkinson at 85 catches, 834 yards, but I have him at 7 touchdowns. So he's a little bit higher on the touchdown list. And I do think that him and Kirk Cousins really did build some chemistry this past year.
So I have Kittle at 800 yards off of 60 receptions and 6 touchdowns.
Okay.
And I, at my number 3 spot, have TJ Hawkinson, and I have him getting 68 receptions for 825 yards and 8 touchdowns. So I think the touchdowns really separate him, and I think he gets a little bit more targets because, like you said, he was building a connection with Kirk Cousins. So I do like that. He is a lot younger than George Kittle, so I think Hawkinson is on the ascension, whereas Kittle is on the decline just a little bit right now. Who do you have at number 3?
I have George Kittle, but I have him at 85 receptions, 1,017 yards, and 8 touchdowns.
It's hard for me to get 100% there. Like I said, the
I know.
Ayuk, I think Ayuk is the best receiver that they have. I think Debo is going to get more receptions and less rushes. So I think those guys are going to be the primary pass catchers, but I think Kittle is also a very good safety blanket, especially if Purdy is the quarterback for the season, then he'll target Kittle more. But as we know, there's an injury risk with Purdy, and he may not start the first week or so. I think if someone like Lance starts, or if someone like your boy Darnold starts for some reason, I don't know if they would target Kittle first. They might target these wide receivers.
Absolutely. We will see. We do know that it's probably going to be Brock Purdy's show, and a second year quarterback may favor the tight end. And I do think that we're seeing Debo fall in drafts, and the excitement around Debo has fallen from last year to this year just because he's not getting the running back snaps that he did now that they acquired Christian McCaffrey. So we will see how that all pans out. But we need to hop to our top two. Who do you have at number two?
So at number 2, I have Mr. Mark Andrews. And I do have him declining a little bit in stats from the previous year just because not a talent decline. Let me clarify. Just statistical decline because they added OBJ, they added Zay Flowers, who I really like. I think that Bateman coming back, if he's healthy, he's going to get some targets. I just don't know if there's enough targets to go around. I know they also have a second tight end there that you like with Likely. So the target pie now has more mouths to feed. And I think that Mark Andrews, instead of getting like 100, 110 receptions, is probably going to get more like 89 or 90. And for like 950 yards, maybe like 7 touchdowns. That's pretty much what I have him right now. And I think that that's probably fair. Jeff, who do you have here? And what do you have for their stats?
Andrews is also my number two, and I have him at 87 receptions, 1,004 yards, and 8 touchdowns.
We're pretty close.
Yep, absolutely. I could see him outperforming that given the health of the other wide receivers and pass catchers, and just seeing who who see if Flowers can rise up, see if Bateman can rise up.
OBJ.
Likely take some snaps away from Andrews. So there's always that as well. You know, the the double
Uh,
likely.
and then I think to no one's shock or surprise, have Travis Kelsey as the number 1 tight end. I kind of split his stats between the last 2 years. So I don't know if he'll get as much as he did last year, but I have him at 105 receptions and 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. Jeff, I assume you have Kelsey here, and what is his stats?
Yeah, I do have Kelsey here. I was trying to think of a believable name that you would think that I would have taken at number one, but there is no other
Hayden
believable
Hurst.
name other than
Hayden
Travis
Hurst.
Kelsey, right? Hayden Hurst, Greg Dolchit. So I have him at 109 receptions for 1,370 yards and 11 touchdowns.
So you think he's going to get close to what he had last year, basically?
Close, yeah. But what have they acquired? I mean, he has to be what he was last year for them to repeat. So he doesn't
Well,
really have a choice.
they have Tony, they have second year Sky Moore, they have
They had them both last
Ross.
year.
They well, I mean, Sky Moore was a rookie. Tony was just brought in halfway through the season, so
I know
I
you're
think that
Yeah, I know you're higher than me on Sky Moore, but he definitely had his fumbles yips. So I don't know if
listen,
that puts him in the doghouse forever, but we'll see. They got Rasheed
and
Rice too.
they have the other Watson at wide receiver, and let's not also forget Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to make a comeback this year. Clearly, he's going to eat into to Travis Kelsey's targets of all people. Clearly, that's no. I think that giving Kelsey, I think 5 less receptions than last year. I have 200 less yards and 2 touchdowns less than he did last year. That's not really significant. Like I said, I split the difference between his 2022 and 2021 seasons, so I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibility. It still makes him overwhelmingly the tight end one. So
Yeah,
he's
and
still,
I mean I completely agree with you on that too. Like I could see his stats taking a dip. Eventually he's gonna have to get old, right?
yeah, eventually. Although, as I like to say, he is a Greek god because his nickname is Zeus. So maybe he'll just never get old. I don't know.
And he does want a pay raise, or was that I think that was greatly exaggerated, but
I think that was exaggerated.
I think that is it for our tight ends. I think the next position that we have coming up, though, for everyone that is on the edge of their seats, we have the quarterback position up next. So next week we will be breaking down the quarterback position. We'll probably be doing the top 15 again, just to give us some differences. But I know we're going to have some crazy differences in the quarterback position. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I know that our schedule is going to be pretty much if there's enough news to do a news episode, we'll do a league news, and then we'll also follow that up with our rankings. We'll have that all out for you guys. But yes, that does it for this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you so much for downloading or listening to the show. Please do not forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
As always, you can find us with our handle at N2EFantasy on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now Threads. Please give us a follow. Until next time, please take care of yourselves. And remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Bye, everybody.